Hi, I'm Jeanette Roche. This is Bridge City News. Here are some of the top stories we've been following. President Trump's press secretary says tariffs for Canada this Saturday still on the books. Plus, Canada's foreign interference report finds no evidence of traitors in Parliament. Toronto Sun's Brian Lilley reacts. And a potential strike averted today at CN Rail. We have the details.
Your nation. Your province. Your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Jeanette Roche.
Thanks so much for joining us. A federal inquiry into foreign interference says there is no evidence of traitors in Parliament conspiring with foreign states, dismissing suggestions to the contrary that alarmed the public. The foreign interference inquiry recommends some changes, but says Canada's democratic institutions have held up well against the dangers. Inquiry Commissioner Marie-Josée Hogg makes more than 4 dozen recommendations to improve preparedness, transparency, and shore up electrical integrity. Hogg's findings and advice come in the middle of a campaign for the federal Liberal leadership and possibly just weeks before a federal election.
Foreign interference did not impact the outcome of the last 2 general elections. Although a few situations involving attempts to curry favor or develop problematic relationship with a parliamentarian have come to light, such phenomena remain marginal and so far appear to have been largely ineffective.
According to Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilley, the report from Commissioner Hogg was very disappointing.
And Justice Hogg said, well, nothing to see here. Move on. She talked about how we have to be worried about misinformation and disinformation. Well, as we've seen with the Trudeau Liberals, that's, to the Trudeau Liberals, misinformation and disinformation is any news story that they don't like, even if it's true and accurate. So I was highly disappointed. But, who am I going to believe? Am I going to believe a judge with zero political experience passing judgment on what happens in politics, or a committee filled with people from all parties saying, yeah, there's problems here and we need to be concerned?
Coming up later in the program, Brian Lilley also gives his thoughts on whether he actually thinks Trump will act on his tariff threats. And speaking of Trump and the tariff issues, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says the plan to slap Canada with punishing tariffs on Saturday is, quote, still on the books. Trump initially promised 25% across-the-board tariffs in response to his issues with border security in both countries. The president has since linked the tariff threat to economic and trade concerns with Canada.
He was asked and answered this question this past weekend when he took a lot of questions from the press, and he said that the February 1st date for Canada and Mexico still holds.
Now, during a press briefing today, Leavitt also said the Senate had confirmed 5 of Trump's cabinet nominees, and that since taking the oath of office, the president has fulfilled over 300 executive actions, including the commencement of the largest mass deportation of illegal immigrants in U.S. history. Back in Canada, Foreign Affairs Minister Mélanie Joly says preventing U.S. tariffs on Canadian goods is her top priority, though Ottawa is ready to respond if they are put in place. She says Canada is making a public case against tariffs, but will keep negotiations private.
Now, we believe that diplomacy can work, and that's why we're having private conversations, and we won't negotiate in front of the public. We believe that our arguments are strong. I think that I've had numerous conversations where the reaction was actually very positive, but meanwhile, there's still a lot of work. This administration in the U.S. is very unpredictable, so we have to be ready and working on both fronts.
The Premier of Ontario was expected to request the dissolution of provincial parliament this afternoon and trigger an election for the end of February. Doug Ford's office says he intended to visit the Lieutenant Governor and ask her to end the legislature's 43rd parliament. He has justified calling an early election by saying he needs a mandate from the electorate to deal with U.S. President Donald Trump and his threatening 25% tariffs. But opposition leaders say calling for an election more than a year early is a waste of time and money. In other news, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau wrapped up his trip to Poland by signing a nuclear energy cooperation deal with his Polish counterpart in Warsaw. Once the agreement is implemented, it'll allow Canadian companies to support Polish efforts to begin generating nuclear power. That'll help reduce Poland's reliance on coal-fired electricity. Trudeau is now returning to Canada after signing the deal today and attending events yesterday to mark the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. Historians estimate more than 1 million people, mostly Jews, were killed at the Nazi extermination camp during the Second World War. Trudeau said, "We all have a responsibility to remember what happened at Auschwitz and the Holocaust and to say, quote, never again."
This is a moment where all human beings must be alert and protect themselves against messages that divide, messages that convince people to think of someone who is different as other or less than you, because that is the pathway that can lead to horrors unimaginable.
And speaking of that big anniversary, on Monday, politicians, dignitaries, and one survivor of the Holocaust gathered at Ottawa's National Holocaust Monument to mark the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. Official Languages Minister Rachel Bendayan and Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre condemned hatred and anti-Semitism in Canada.
We are witness to the rise of anti-Semitism around the world. From right here at home, too close to home for me, where only a few blocks away from where I live in Outremont, a Jewish elementary school was shot at not once, not twice, but 3 times. We must fight back.
We had all hoped that we had left the ugly, authoritarian, socialist ideologies of fascism and communism behind. But they came roaring back with extreme and radical movements. We as Canadians must live on as allies and friends so that when we say never again, we mean it.
And closer to home, in the height of increased demand for water, the Alberta government is investing in studying and mapping out groundwater throughout southern Alberta. The province will provide a $3.8 million grant to the Alberta Geological Survey to complete a 3-year study to map out new locations and the quality of groundwater. Bernhard Mayer, professor of Earth, Energy and Environment at the University of Calgary, says that knowledge of the extent of groundwater in many regions in the province is still limited, and this project will improve their understanding to provide water for drinking, agriculture, industrial activities, and maintaining ecological balance. Approximately 3.8% of all water allocations in the province were from groundwater sources in 2023, although more than 600,000 rural Albertans rely on groundwater for drinking. Well, when it comes to saving lives, every single second matters. That's why Lethbridge Police, along with Fire and Emergency Services, partnered in the creation of the Tactical Emergency Medical Services, or TEMS, program. The new initiative embeds 7 care paramedics with LPS tactical team to provide life-saving care on the scene, such as hostage takings or active assailant scenarios. Gerard Grobmeyer, Deputy Chief with Lethbridge Police Service, says why it's important to launch this initiative.
Over the past few years, we've seen an increase in tactical team deployments and high-risk incidents involving weapons and violence. We've had some close calls, including a hostage taking that resulted in life-threatening injuries to the victim. In that case, the victim fortunately survived, but both agencies recognized the increased risks to the safety and the public of our first responders. Prior to the implementation of TEMS, paramedics would be staged blocks or even further away from the scene of an incident, resulting in a delayed response. Now, TEMS paramedics will be on scene in the inner perimeter with police and available to immediately provide critical medical care in the event that a call results in casualties.
That will provide additional support to the citizens of Lethbridge. This initiative has been underway for many years, and we're very excited that we're rolling it out in 2025.
So what will happen is a critical incident will come in. As I'm calling out the tactical team and other critical incident units, at the same time I'll be calling out Peter, who will assign 2 Thames medics that'll come to the police station, and they'll jump in the armored rescue vehicle and will be in the inner perimeter on any critical incident in the city of Lethbridge.
This is in addition to the level of EMS that we provide regularly. So our staffing level of ambulances aren't affected at all. This is over and above that.
Officials say the Thames concept originated with the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department in 1971 and has since expanded to agencies throughout North America. Lethbridge joins several other police agencies in Alberta who have Thames programs. Well, Lethbridge Police introduced a vulnerable persons registry on Monday, a voluntary program which aims to identify people who would be in need of additional assistance during emergencies or high-stress incidents. Personal details such as medical conditions, emergency contacts, and preferred communication methods may be used for clarification on the person's needs during situations where they may be in need of assistance.
The vulnerable person or the guardian can go to the police service website, register that person. We're going to ask them a whole bunch of questions, ask them for an updated picture, and then that information will be available to police members. There's a window cling decal and a card that when the person is a successful registrant on the registry, they can come to the front desk of the police station and get a decal and a card. So the decal would be for them to put on their car window or their window of their house to notify the Lethbridge Police or EMS that a vulnerable person lives there, for them to look at the registry in order to know the information prior to getting there.
On Saturday, rallies were held across Alberta for a day of action by United Nurses of Alberta. The union continues to negotiate with Alberta Health Services on new contract agreements and are demanding respect to all healthcare workers and patients. BCN's Landon Hickok has more on this story.
The union representing Alberta nurses went on a day of action on Saturday, hosting 13 different rallies across the province, including here in Lethbridge. The union continues to bargain for fairer wages and lower wait times for patients, as well as more respect for workers from the provincial government. The Lethbridge rally took place on 10th Avenue outside the doors of Chinook Regional Hospital. The province-wide day of action coincided with the anniversary of the 1988 nurses' strike, where thousands of nurses walked off the job. Continued concerns of nurses experiencing burnout and leaving the profession remain in the minds of the union today, as well as the province's plans to break up Alberta Health Services into various agencies. United Nurses of Alberta say their intent is to show solidarity with those who partook in the 1988 strike, as formal mediation began last week in the continued contract negotiations between the union and AHS.
We've had a great turnout today. We have many of our members, friends, families that are here, and we have, of course, a lot of our other unions that are here in Lethbridge. Despite the cold today, it's great. Everybody's got high energy and wanting to send a message to the government about bargaining in good faith with us, about just ensuring that we can provide safe patient care, and just trying to show solidarity for one another.
For Bridge City News, I'm Landon Hickok.
Thank you, Landon. A cardiac science gala will be held in Lethbridge this Saturday. The goal of the event is to raise awareness of the fact that heart disease is the leading cause of death in the South Zone. Dr. Sayi Zilki, who is the chair of the South Zone Cardiac Sciences Advisory Cabinet, says the mortality rate from cardiac problems is 26.6% in the South Zone compared to the rest of the province.
To host this event as part of the larger, broader fundraising campaign, as we aim to raise $30 million towards building cardiology and cardiac services to help improve access to services and reduce our mortality rate from heart disease. We believe it's the largest gala ever held in Lethbridge. We are sold out, we have a waiting list, and we have also broken the record for the fundraising going into the event. We have raised over $400,000 going into the event. An incredible opportunity to be able to make a difference in our community and push for something that will save lives.
And I have heard, and I'm confirming that per capita in all of Canada, we have recruited more doctors than anywhere else in Canada per capita, which is something really to hang your hat on, and it's due in part to those that help and support here. You know, when families want to move to Lethbridge, you want to make sure that these services are available for them. We should be able to have the same services that some of the other communities have, and so I talked about Calgary or Edmonton, and so the time that it takes to transfer someone up to Calgary, that's time that that person could lose a life.
The gala will take place at the Lethbridge and District Exhibition on Saturday, February the 1st. Well, you may have noticed a new listing on your TV guide. That's because a new channel has launched across Canada this week, and in a sense, it's part of the Miracle Channel family. It turns out our own Bridge City News has a roundabout connection to the famous Dr. Phil McGraw of TV's Dr. Phil. That Dr. Phil, that's the one I'm talking about. So MCA Media Group, which is the umbrella company of Miracle Channel and BCN, is announcing a strategic partnership with Dr. Phil's Merit Street Media, that is, USA, to launch Merit TV Canada, a new television network featuring high-quality, family-friendly programming across the nation. But this doesn't mean BCN or Miracle Channel will go away. Kaylin Steele of MCA Media Group explains.
It's been really fun and a fantastic opportunity to work with a group of producers to specifically design and reimagine our Return to Reason lineup of programs so that they can seamlessly flow on Merit TV and really reach a whole new audience. I think a lot of the Bridge City News audience loved our Freedom Convoy coverage, and if you did, then you'll definitely be interested in some of the shows we're making for Merit TV.
The network will be available through various cable and satellite providers, as well as streaming platforms, ensuring broad accessibility for all Canadians. Well, we need to take a quick break, but when we return, we'll take a look at the warm yet windy forecast. I'll be right back. Warm and windy, that's the kind of Tuesday we were looking at today, with plus temperatures and up to 80 km/h winds. Much the same again tomorrow as well. Also this evening, look for those 80 winds as well. And tomorrow on Wednesday, sunshine, high of 9 degrees, and windy conditions again. And then Thursday, Friday, looking at those beautiful double digits there. Lots of clear skies, sunshine, high of 10 degrees for both of those days. Things much different as we get into the weekend. Saturday could see a slight chance of flurries, still on the pluses there, 1 degree, but look what happens by Saturday night. We're going to drop right down to minus 21, and then on Sunday, the daytime high is minus 21. So look what happens here. Going from plus double digits to minus 20s. We're seeing this polar vortex swoop in there. We're also seeing 70% chance of flurries on Sunday, and then 60% through Sunday night, right into Monday there with that high of 20, minus 22 that is. So some drastic changes coming our way as we start to get into the month of February. Average high for this time of year, 0. Average low, minus 12. Not so much this weekend. Record high on this day was 14 degrees. That happened back in 1940. And in 1929, it was chilly, freezing, minus 43. That was the record cold on this day. Sun rose this morning at 8:10, and 5:20 is when the sun's going down. That's 9 hours and 10 minutes later. So we are definitely seeing more sunshine these days. Speaking of sunshine on the coast there, Vancouver expecting clear skies after the fog dissipates in the morning, high of 4 degrees. But on the island there, Victoria seeing a 30% chance of drizzle, high of 6 degrees. 4 degrees expected for the high tomorrow in Edmonton, with snow ending around noon. And then in Calgary, mix of sun and cloud, high of 10 and 30 to 50k winds. Okay, as we look into the rest of the prairies here, Saskatoon is seeing a high of -1 tomorrow. Could see a slight chance of flurries. Regina sitting at -3 also in Winnipeg. Winnipeg could see a chance of flurries there as well. Flurries and or showers, or a little bit of both, are what is expected tomorrow in Toronto, high of 2 degrees. -7 for the high in Ottawa, 2 to 4 centimeters of snow expected there. Montreal, lots of snow, 5 to 10 centimeters expected there, -11 for the expected high. Fredericton also seeing 2 to 4 centimeters expected of that white stuff there, -8 the high, -3 expected in Halifax with 5 to 10 centimeters expected. 60% a chance of flurries expected in Charlottetown tomorrow, -8, and -4 for the high in St. John's with a 40% chance of flurries. 70k winds there after a wind warning was in effect earlier today with up to 100k winds there, more like 70 tomorrow. So there you have it. That is your forecast. A potential strike today at Canadian National Railway has been averted. The company reached a 4-year tentative agreement with the union representing some 750 signals and communication workers across Canada. Details haven't been released, but the union had been pushing for better work-life balance and higher pay. The deal still needs to be ratified. PV Industries LP says it's closing all of its stores nationwide. A statement from the farm goods company says store closing sales will start at 90 PV Mart stores and 6 Main Street hardware locations, as it has obtained an initial order for creditor protection. It says liquidation sales will begin immediately. PV Industries blames several factors for its decision to seek creditor protection and close its doors, including record low consumer confidence, increased operating costs, and continued disruptions to the supply chain. A number of brands in Canada's retail industry have filed for creditor protection, with some store closures already announced. Women's apparel company Comark Holdings says all of its Ricky's and Cleo stores will be closing as it files for creditor protection. Court documents show the company, which employs 2,056 people across Canada, runs 75 Ricky stores and 54 Cleo stores, along with more than a dozen the brands split with Comark's bootlegger stores. Well, Canadians are moving quickly to sell their homes in Florida. The exodus of snowbirds from the Sunshine State is being driven by a weak dollar and increasing insurance costs. The National Association of Realtors says Canadians made up nearly a quarter of foreign sellers in Florida between April 2023 and March of last year, compared to 11% just a year earlier. Residents and real estate agents say the higher cost of living, risk of damage from natural disasters, and a growing taste for travel to different destinations each winter account for the snowbird flight. Now here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was up 130 basis points today at 25,419. The Dow was also up 136 points at 44,850. The S&P 500 was up 55 points to 6,067, and the Nasdaq was up 391 points to 19,733. West Texas Intermediate oil was up 78 cents to $73.95 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 33 cents to $3.36 US. Gold was up 21.60 to $27.59.10 US an ounce, and silver was up 11 cents at $30.36 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $8.55 per bushel, barley is at $6.57, canola is at $14.40, and corn is at $8.45 per bushel. Live cattle February contract was up $2.88 to $208.55. Feeder cattle January contract was up $2.10 to $281.83, and lean hogs February contract was up 85 cents at $83.90. And the Canadian dollar remained unchanged over the past 24 hours and currently sits at 69.50 US.
Recapping one of our top stories, a federal inquiry into foreign interference says there's no evidence of traitors in Parliament conspiring with foreign states, dismissing suggestions to the contrary that alarmed the public. The foreign interference inquiry is recommending more than four dozen changes, but says Canada's democratic institutions have held up well against the dangers. Meantime, Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilley gives us his take on the public inquiry into foreign interference, saying it's disappointing. He also weighs in about how serious he thinks Trump is with all his tariff threats. All of that coming up right after the break. Also, when you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca, and you can visit our website anytime to check out more of our news and interviews. Well, February 1st is just days away. That's the day Donald Trump promised to bring in tariffs on all goods from Canada and Mexico. But will Trump go for it, or will he not? Here to discuss this is Brian Lilley of the Toronto Sun. Brian, welcome. So what do you think? Is Trump going to do this, or do you think he's bluffing?
I don't think he's bluffing. Now, will it be February 1st? Will he change the date? Look, this guy is completely unpredictable, but we know that he is all in on tariffs. He talked the other day just about how they could repeal the income tax. You know, before the First World War, we didn't have the income tax, and things were great. We were so rich. We were the best. We were the most rich. Because of tariffs. And he talks about wanting to go back to that. But he also uses tariffs as a show of political force. And we saw that with the government of Colombia on the weekend. The Trump administration arrested a bunch of criminals. I mean, these are really bad dudes that they arrested. I don't know why the Biden administration hadn't picked them up. They knew where they were. They knew that they were guilty of all kinds of violent, nasty crimes. And a bunch of them were from Colombia. And so they're flying a plane of a few hundred Colombians back to Colombia, nasty criminals. And the president of Colombia says, oh, well, we won't take them. So Trump posts to social media, all right, you're getting a 25% tariff now, 50% tariff by the end of next week, plus all of these other measures. All of a sudden, the situation's
Colombia
resolved.
says, welcome back.
Yeah, all of a sudden, they're like, yeah, no problem. So for Trump, it's both an economic measure and a negotiating tool. I don't think we're going to escape these.
Okay, well, that's disappointing because, you know, we all know that Trump's not a huge fan of Justin Trudeau. So you don't think he's just doing it to poke Justin Trudeau, and you don't think things would all be different if, let's say, Pierre Poilievre were prime minister? You don't think that would get resolved?
Pierre Poilievre could become prime minister tomorrow. I'd be very happy with that. But Pierre Poilievre could become prime minister tomorrow, and that would not change Trump's view on tariffs. The Americans do have some long-standing grievances with us. Things that go back decades, like softwood lumber, like supply management on dairy, cultural industries. But they've also got other more recent things like the Online Streaming Act, the Digital Sales Tax, the Online News Act, that they say unfairly target American tech companies. And so, you know, I started to look into this when Trump said, oh, Canada's been really nasty to us on trade. I said, okay, well, what are they complaining about? And the Americans actually publish this annually, all the trade irritants with every country around the world. And they're very open. Unlike our government, they're very open about it. And on some of them, you can look and you say, well, I disagree. On others, you can look and say, they've got a point. Problem is, we're a very protectionist country, now complaining that the Americans are being protectionist and demanding that they not be protectionist to us while we're protectionist to them.
Yeah, that's interesting. It seems like sometimes Poilievre and Trump speak the same language. You think that things could be more resolved?
I think he would have a better chance of getting a deal with Donald Trump than Justin Trudeau or Mark Carney or Chrystia Freeland or whoever takes over. But I don't think that would mean that the tariffs would disappear. There's still going to be need to be a negotiation. Stephen Harper negotiated hard to get a good deal for Canada, but also one that made the Americans happy on softwood lumber more than a decade ago. We need that sort of thinking. We don't have that in Ottawa right now.
Yeah, I know Trump sort of made the excuse that he's doing this because of border security and border encounters. But when you look at the numbers released, it looks like only a fraction of the drugs and apprehensions coming over the U.S. border is actually from Canada. So maybe the big question is on everyone's mind, why is Trump doing this? And I know, Brian, you've read thoughts on people about Trump. You've met and interviewed some of them over the years. So you just think that what's behind all of this is just money, economy, tariffs. So he wants to do it. He's going to do what he's going to do.
The border issue is what he raised at the end of November. Yeah. And, in terms of illegal crossings, it's much bigger than the Trudeau government claims. They claim it's 1%. Really, it's about 7% of the problem. On fentanyl, the detailed numbers on what we have, it's very small. But when I spoke to Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, she said it's becoming a growing problem in Alberta and BC. And so she's acknowledging that it's a problem. But beyond that, yeah, I've talked to and interviewed people over the years who I never knew were ever going to be in the Trump administration or didn't even know Donald Trump was going to be running when I started talking to these people. They are big believers in changing the way that the global trading order operates, the way that the American economy operates. They think that the last several decades have been good for people who invest on Wall Street, but bad for people who rely on Main Street, people who rely on those factory jobs in Ohio, in Pennsylvania, in what we now call the Rust Belt. And so the new administration is actually looking out for the little guy, which you have to give them some credit for, because far too many politicians have, as jobs have been disappearing across North America, not just the United States, but in small and medium-sized cities in Canada as well. What's been the answer? Oh, go learn to code. That's not the answer for everyone, Jeanette. I mean, that's simply not the answer.
Yeah.
And so the Trump guys are looking at something different, but they do believe that tariffs are a way to shift the geo-economic order. So they're trying to shift geopolitics using economics. China is trying to make a major play to replace the United States as the dominant country. And the United States wants to remain on top. This is a big part of what all of this is about, whether we're talking Greenland, Panama Canal, tariffs, what have you. China is always in the background.
Mm-hmm. And, of course, the Liberals promising to spend tens of billions to help companies work and survive all of this tariff stuff. And, but that spending can't happen without Parliament coming back and opposition parties supporting the Liberal government. So what will happen? We're in the middle of prorogation here.
So you're already starting to see the foundation be laid. All the opposition parties need to line up behind the government. We're in a national crisis. So Parliament's supposed to come back March 24th. And, they're going to have a speech from the throne with a new Liberal leader, whoever that is. They're going to lay out their mandate. They're going to have to present a spending bill because the government's only funded to March 31st. And then, of course, there are these measures. I mean, by that point, if the tariffs come in on February 1st, we'll know exactly the impact because they will have been hitting for 2 months. They're going to try and find a way to get the opposition parties, to shame the opposition parties into supporting a government led by someone who was chosen by a questionable, with no real mandate, elected by questionable means through the Liberal Party process, and say, you've got to support us. I mean, whoever's elected will not be able to negotiate with Donald Trump. They have zero mandate. This will be horrific for us. But yes, that's what we're going to see at the end of March. Vote for us, or you're going to be keeping Canadians from getting the supports they need.
Yeah, and we've got Mark Carney, it looks like, coming in at the top of the pack there. You think he's not the man for the job, though?
I don't, and simply because I look at his policies. And what do we need to be doing right now? We need to be expanding oil and gas exports, right? Whether it's reviving projects like Northern Gateway or Energy East or something like them, or expanding LNG exportation, liquefaction and exportation ports. We need to be doing that. Is Mark Carney the man who rallied the entire global banking industry to support his Glasgow financial, alliance for net zero, which they're all walking away from now. All the major Canadian and American banks are walking away from that. He's all about net zero. He opposes pipelines unless he's chairman of a company that owns them in Brazil and Saudi Arabia, then he likes them. The guy does not like the oil and gas industry. He does not like pipelines. He does not like energy infrastructure. He wants a net zero economy. He wants to keep resources in the ground. If Canada is going to survive in an era where the United States has decided they're going to redraw the trading alliances and the global economic order of the last few decades, then we need to find new markets and we need to find new ways to get our product to market. Mark Carney's not the guy for that. The guy opposes our number one industry, which lies beneath your feet in Alberta. He does not support it. So why would he be the guy? He is worse than Justin Trudeau on this. And by the way, he's portraying himself as the outsider. All the people around Justin Trudeau who were groomsmen in his wedding party, from Mark Miller to Seamus O'Regan to Jerry Butts, are all behind him. The Prime Minister's office is behind him. This guy's not an outsider. He's the ultimate insider.
Oh, my goodness. And then Pierre Poilievre gave an interview in Atlantic Canada that you, Brian, said was the clearest description on what Canada's response should be to American tariffs. So what made Poilievre's position so much different?
Well, it was very smart. I mean, he said that he would go dollar for dollar retaliation with the Americans. But big caveat here. He didn't say he would make it an across-the-board 25% tariff. So Donald Trump is threatening 25% tariffs on every Canadian export to the United States. Well, think about what we import from the United States and think about the time of year that we're in right now. You put a 25% tariff on fresh fruits and vegetables. Wow, your grocery bill's going up by quite a bit, isn't it? So what did Poilievre say? He said, we need to match them dollar for dollar, but we need to do it on things that we either do not make or things we, so we're not going to tariff things that we don't make or we can't find somewhere else. So celery from Bakersfield, California, or tomatoes or other fresh fruits and vegetables that we're going to rely on the Americans for in the winter, we're not going to put tariffs on them. But if there's something that we make inside our country or something that we can easily get from Mexico or from Europe, okay, we'll put a tariff on that. Far smarter than just saying blanket across the board. He was very thoughtful, very methodical in how he laid out his positions. I thought it was the best response that I've seen. Now, some people disagree with the dollar for dollar idea and getting into a trade war. They say we can't win it. But if you're going to do that, and by the way, more than 80% of Canadians, including 88% in Alberta, think that's what we need to do, according to a Leger poll. Well, if we're going to do that, do it the smart way. And that's what Pierre Poilievre put forward, not just doing it blindly and dumbly and saying, we'll cut off the energy, we'll cut off oil exports, no more electricity. Yeah, that'll go great as soon as they cut off our imports from them of electricity and oil and gas.
Now, Brian, just this morning, Thursday morning, media were waiting with bated breath as a judge released her report on the findings, I guess her findings of international, what is it called? International...
The Foreign Interference Inquiry,
There
yes.
we go. Yes, the Foreign Interference Inquiry. Thank you. And it kind of ended up looking like nothing to see here. So you were waiting for that as well, right, Brian? What did you think of that?
Very disappointed. We've got the National Committee of Parliamentarians, NSICOP it's called. These are MPs and senators from across party lines. So every party is represented. The House of Commons is represented. The Senate's represented. They looked at the information and they said that, well, we have concerns that there are people who are either wittingly or unwittingly being directed by foreign governments. And Justice Hogue said, well, nothing to see here. Move on. She talked about how we have to be worried about misinformation and disinformation. Well, as we've seen with the Trudeau Liberals, that's, to the Trudeau Liberals, misinformation and disinformation is any news story that they don't like, even if it's true and accurate. So I was highly disappointed. But who am I going to believe? Am I going to believe a judge with zero political experience passing judgment on what happens in politics, or a committee filled with people from all parties saying, yeah, there's problems here and we need to be concerned? I'm going to take the judgment of the people who are in the Liberal Party, the Conservative Party, the Bloc Québécois, the NDP, in the House of Commons and the Senate, who say, yeah, this is an issue. Justice Hogue, very disappointed in this. But, on this front, we're not a serious country, Jeanette. We've got, foreign interference happening, China interfering in our elections, a Liberal leadership where they're letting 14-year-olds who aren't even citizens of this country pick the next prime minister. And we're just told, look away. It's like Dorothy finding the guy behind the curtain in The Wizard of Oz and being told to look away. No, not going to happen.
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. All right. Now, the Liberal Party has certified the 6 candidates and kicked one out recently, and they've cut off the ability to register to vote now. So you have written that the Liberal leadership race is ripe for abuse. Why do you say that?
Because they have no ability to determine who is and is not a citizen or a permanent resident. All you had to do was provide your name, your email address, your phone number, your mailing address, and click a box that said, I support the purposes of the Liberal Party. That's it. And you're registered to vote. Okay, so how do you prove that I'm actually eligible to vote? How do I prove that I'm over 14? How do I prove that I'm a Canadian or in Canada? The Liberal Party does not have the ability to do this. Now, I emailed them and asked them a bunch of questions, and in one response, they said that, we will have strict identification verifications. Give me a break. You guys are the ones that lowered the ID requirements to vote in a general election. There's no way that you're going to be stricter in your weird little online voting system to pick the next leader and prime minister than you are in a general election. So yeah, we could have bot farms directed by China or India or Russia helping pick our next prime minister. And if they're going to be involved, this is one of the things that the Hogue Commission, the Foreign Interference Commission report acknowledged. Yeah, there were some people trying to interfere in one Toronto riding. I think it's more than that, Judge. So she admitted that if China's going to interfere in one riding in suburban Toronto to try and get someone nominated for the Liberal, to be the Liberal candidate, what do you think they're going to do to pick the next prime minister of a G7 country? Of course, they're going to interfere. And there's nothing the Liberals have to do it. Now, let me be clear. The NDP and the Conservatives also need to clean up their leadership races and their nomination races, but they're not the ones in charge right now. In my view, and I would not have said this a couple of years ago, but in my view, all parties that want to contest a federal election need to follow the same rules for nominations and leadership as we have for a general election. You have to be a Canadian citizen. You have to be over the age of 18. There has to be ID verification. If you can't do that, don't hold the vote.
Brian Lilley, columnist with the Toronto Sun, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
If you're like me and you've got private insurance and benefits, you may be scrolling through what is covered and wondering what you could get treatment for, especially as the year gets closer to the end or at the start of the year when our benefits reset themselves. One of those things that you may be wondering if you need it or not is osteopathy. What is it? A lot of people don't know what it is. Well, I'm here with a practitioner who's going to answer one of those some of those questions for us. I'm here with Mitchell Lawrence. He is an osteopathic manual therapist at Reset Osteopathy at the Medicine Tree in Lethbridge. Mitchell, welcome.
Hi there.
So first off, can you just tell us a little bit what osteopathy is?
So osteopathy is a holistic manual therapy and it aims to identify and treat various different conditions, injuries or just pains that you might have. We use a wide range of different techniques ranging from joint mobilization and articulation, massage techniques, releases for different muscles or complexes, as well as exercises, all of which are prescribed to the individual's needs.
So what specifically does it treat, and can you give me some examples?
So there's really no exhaustive list of what it can and can't treat. We see people with arthritis, headaches, just lower back pains and aches. We also treat nerve conditions such as sciatica or carpal tunnel, for a few of the more common ones you might have heard of. But then we can also treat things such as recovery from surgery or injuries, or such as joint replacements, things like that.
I've heard some people compare osteopathy to kind of like a merger between massage and physiotherapy and chiropractic. Is that what would you say? Is that an accurate description?
Yes, a lot of people describe it in that way, probably due to the techniques that we use. We use different soft tissue and deep tissue massage techniques, but we also address the joints and the spine to try and release tension in there. But then we do give exercises as well, and these are suitable to everyone and they are prescribed differently. So that's the physio component that a lot of people would say, but really the combination of all of them is the way that we do our treatments.
So if someone has, say, lower back pain and they've got like a lot of, they feel a lot of tension in there, their muscles are tense, what's the benefit of osteopathy versus just going to see a massage therapist?
So we work holistically. So that means we won't just look at the lower back, we will maybe look at your mid back, into the areas below it, into your pelvis and hips, but even down into your legs. We also look at lifestyle, previous injuries, because all of these can either predispose or maintain the injury that you currently have. So really using all of these components helps to get to the cause of what's going on, and that will make treatment more thorough and more effective.
Okay, so I'm curious to learn more about this, and you know, I mentioned lower back because I'm a person who's a side sleeper, and when I'm sleeping on my side, sometimes I wake up in the morning and I've got pain in my sides and it radiates to my back. I do get some relief though with a pillow between my legs. Can you just explain what's going on?
So what the pillow will do is help to keep a more neutral spine and pelvis. When we are sleeping, lots of people will sleep in ways that could compromise their lower back or other areas such as their shoulders or neck. But the pillow is a really simple thing to do that can go between your legs. It shouldn't cause too much discomfort or affect the way you sleep, but it will make you wake up and not feel potentially as stiff. And then you could use that alongside exercises, for example, that we give, and that will help you get going in the morning.
It's funny that you mentioned pillows because it seems like one pillow is not enough, but two pillows is too many. Have you heard that complaint before?
Yes, and it takes our body time to adapt as well. So you might try one pillow, it might be not enough, two might be too many, but after a couple of weeks, two might be perfect. It's all different based on the individual.
So it's great that you're explaining all of this, but I'm more of a visual guy, and I'm obviously some of our viewers here are as well. Do you mind like demonstrating some techniques on me, and you know, just so the viewer can see like, you know, what exactly happens during an osteopathy session?
Of course.
All right, so I mentioned I've got some lower back pain from the way I sleep. Some neck strain. What do you recommend you perform on me today?
So first we'd have to look at how the joints are moving. So to do that, I will get you to do some movements, and then I will do some movements for you. Then I can have a palpation in the area that's affected, and using your feedback, we can identify what is painful. And from that, we'll then get into treatment.
Okay, great. All right, let's do that.
First, would you just be able to stand facing the other direction, just so I can have a look at your back, please? Okay. So I'm just going to place my hands on your hips, if that's okay.
Okay.
And so I'm just checking the levels of different landmarks in your hips, your pelvis, and your lower back. Is there any pain when I'm pressing in there?
No. It actually feels kind of nice because it's like a mini shiatsu when you're pushing in like that.
Almost like a little bit of relief?
Yeah, like a micro massage.
Yes, I understand. And then I'm just going to get you to take a seat here, please, if that's okay.
Okay.
So if you could just cross your arms like that.
Okay.
Good. And I'm just going to reach my arm around the front here. Okay. I'm just going to be rotating your back.
So here I can see like the physio side of osteopathy.
Yeah, what I'm doing right now is analysing how different parts of your back are moving. You mentioned how you've got that lower back discomfort, but sometimes we have to look elsewhere, and that could be contributing to what you've got going on.
Okay.
So would you be able to lay on your back now, please?
Sure.
If that's okay. And so we've just got, and then one leg at a time, I'm just going to lift your leg up straight. Do you feel any pain shooting down the back of your leg?
No, I just feel stretching.
Feel some tension? And if I lower your leg and pull your foot back, and then your toe, is that okay? No shooting pain? Good. And we're just going to compare the other side.
Okay. Just stretching.
Same, just that stretching. Okay, good. And then the foot and the toe. Is that okay?
Yep.
Good. So if you could roll onto your side facing me, please.
Okay.
I'm just going to take your lower back through the same movements that I've got you to do, standing up.
Okay.
So I'm just going to bend your legs. Good. And then I'm just going to move your legs towards and away from your body.
So what does you doing this versus me doing it accomplish?
So when you are doing it, you are actively doing the movement, which means you are activating the muscles as well. When I am doing it, you are passively doing that. So what it means is that your muscles aren't engaging, and I can have a better look at your true range of motion in the joint.
Okay.
Because sometimes if the muscle is the limiting factor, then I will be able to produce more movement than you would yourself.
Yeah, and earlier I said it feels like I'm doing a bit of physio. Now it feels like I'm getting a massage.
Yeah, this technique that I'm doing right now is a soft tissue technique, and it aims to just promote a bit of blood flow, break some tension in between the muscles. And what that will allow us to do is then move your joints and really release any tension that's in the joints as well.
Typically, do you have a certain type of client that you attract the most, like athletes or business professionals or people with sedentary lifestyles or people with very active lifestyles?
I get asked that question a lot actually, and the truthful answer is I see all sorts of people. I see a mixture of young athletes, parents who have just got stresses from work, maybe injuries or just from life, but also elderly people who have been having more chronic issues for longer. So yeah, there's no real trend to who we see. It's a really wide range of people.
That stretch you just did felt amazing.
Good, that should be helping to open up and release your lower back, but also into your pelvis.
How would osteopathy be complementary to someone who also visits a massage therapist and or a chiropractor?
So what we can do is we'll ask the patient maybe what their massage therapist or chiropractor is working on, so that we can then use that to guide our practice. But it will just help to further relax some muscles, release some tension in joints, maybe in between osteopathy appointments. So some people might come for an appointment once a month, but then in between that might go for a massage just to reinforce that relaxation.
Because I've heard that if you combine a chiropractic adjustment with a massage, the adjustment holds longer. Is that the same with osteopathy?
Because we do multiple techniques, a lot of people say that they feel after a session, it's almost as if they've had a chiropractic adjustment and a massage, because we work on the joints, not just the spine, but all the joints, as well as the muscles. So a lot of people would almost describe the effect of an osteopathic session to be that of a chiropractic and massage together. So I'm just going to do a little bit of work on your neck now. So I'm just going to see how it's moving first.
Sure.
So if I just turn your head that way and then the other way, do you see how it doesn't want to go that way?
Oh yeah.
As much.
Yeah. Is it because of side sleeping?
It could be many different factors.
Or like my pillow?
That could be a factor. Lifestyle, work, maybe previous injuries. There's lots that could be contributing to it.
I actually had a dull pain in the top of my head, and I didn't really notice it until it started going away just now. So have we become somewhat desensitized to pain?
Some people, if they've had chronic pain for a long time, the body's response to pain can change. And so some people might feel that something is less painful. Some people's bodies could get more sensitive to pain. So a stimuli that maybe wasn't sensitive in the past could now cause pain. And that's very different for every person.
What kind of training do you need to go through in order to get into this type of work?
So I trained in the UK, in Wales, and my program was a 4-year integrated master's course at Swansea University, and that's 4 years all in one go, and as part of that course we have to do 1,200 hours of clinical practice.
Wow.
And so that is the way that you can then graduate, and after that you go straight into work.
So we know that chiropractors, they have to follow regulations, same with massage therapists. What about osteopaths, or in your case, an osteopathic manual therapist?
So here in Alberta, our regulatory body is the Alberta Association of Osteopathic Manual Therapists. So we have regulations with them regarding like insurance, treatments, right to practice. That's different province by province, and so it depends whereabouts in not just Canada but whereabouts in the world you are. But a lot of the regulatory bodies will be very similar in terms of right to practice, what you are and aren't allowed to do as an osteopathic manual therapist.
So obviously we've been through some techniques here, and I must say, like, I do feel a lot more, like my joints are more fluid. I can move a lot easier. Typically after an appointment, what would you recommend that a patient does to keep things kind of like well oiled?
So we try and work with what a patient would usually do in their daily life. So we try not to say that they have to limit or restrict their activities, but usually after an appointment, taking it a little bit easy is a good idea, just so that we don't strain the body. It just gives that body time to respond to the treatment, but from the next day, they can get back into their normal routine, back into training, working, whatever that might be.
Mitchell Lawrence is an osteopathic manual therapist. Mitchell, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm Naveen Day. On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, thanks for watching.